From 10 to 18 years old, children are undergoing a big change in their life. Actually, changing from children to teenagers and really into young adults. This adolescent period of life can be a lot of turmoil, and there are some ways that Ayurveda can help. First, around this period, the child goes through puberty, and these hormonal changes really set the stage for development of the secondary sex characteristics, for a lot of emotional swings and overwhelming emotions. The adolescent may become self-conscious or have a lot of social insecurity. There may be a lot of risk-taking, etc. And one thing that you notice about all those different symptoms there is that they're all associated with high pitta dosha, and really all associated with the liver as well. So these hormonal fluctuations can aggravate the liver, especially if the liver is weak a little bit. And so we're going to pay close attention to the liver. We're going to pay close attention to pitta. But we also want to remember that the adolescent is still young, and so kapha is still high. It's still kapha time of life. And in general, what this means is that really from the time the puberty starts, the adolescent enters pitta kapha time of life. And we're generally going to be managing pitta and kapha throughout the teenage years. These adolescents are going to be exposed to lots of potentially dangerous issues, drugs, sex, etc. Their peer group becomes very important to them. However, their peer group is very inexperienced. So as they're preparing for adulthood, naturally, these adolescents want to establish an identity that's separate from their parents and have independence from their parents, but they still really love their parents, right? Everyone loves their parents. It's part of our nature to love your parent, even if you hate them. But they want to claim their own achievements. They have their own opinions and autonomy, and that can cause friction with the parents. And also, they have limited experience, and so their opinions, they can really hurt themselves too. So it's a tightrope walk, and an area where if you have a teenager or adolescent, you may want to do some research, read some books, get some good tips, try to figure things out, and so that you can prevent problems, maintain the relationship, but not at the expense of your teenager's future, where you can guide them appropriately. The teenage brain does not perceive risk in the same way as an adult. So things that don't seem risky to them may seem very risky to an adult, and that experimental behavior is where they can get into trouble. The brain doesn't stop developing until age 25, and that's why some researchers consider 18 to 24 as a period of later adolescence. The brain's still growing and changing during this time. And so if the adolescent is experimenting with alcohol and drugs during this phase, it is more damaging to the brain. You're preventing development. So unfortunately, that's also a time of life where there's most pressure to do those things, alcohol and drugs in particular. Let's go over some illnesses that start to crop up during this time. Hair follicles in the skin getting clogged with dead skin cells and oil can become inflamed, and that's the condition we call acne. And this acne, what's the pathogenesis from Ayurveda's point of view? That these excess hormones around puberty really tax the liver and stress out the liver, and that prevents the liver from detoxifying the blood. So there's more impurities in the blood. More impurities in rasa rakta, the two components of the blood, and that irritates the skin. Now again, we're still in kapha time of life, and now we have added heat to it. So what heat plus kapha equals oil, right? Pitta kapha individuals usually have excess oiliness, So that oiliness together with the toxicity creates a ripe environment for infection. And that's why if there is acne, the Ayurvedic line of treatment is going to involve reducing ama as well as pitta and kapha. Some lifestyle treatments include washing the face, washing your pillowcase so that you get the bacteria off the pillowcase, eating things like blueberries and pitta kapha pacifying diet, right? Avoiding like the spicy, rich foods with excess meat and things like that. Red meat in them might be helpful. Avoiding oily and fried foods. I think of pizza. If you use the doctrine of signatures, pizza kind of looks like acne. And let's analyze it a little bit. It has the sweetness and oiliness to it with the carbohydrate crust and cheese. And then you have the pepperoni and the tomato sauce, which is hot. So it's a perfect cocktail for provoking acne in a teenager. This is beta-carotene. It's spelt wrong here. I don't know really what the spell changer did with that one. But beta-carotene-rich foods can support the liver, like sweet potatoes, blueberries, carrots, and kale. Topical astringents might help, like witch hazel and rose water. Other anti-inflammatories, like rose water, aloe vera, turmeric, and amalaki may be able to help too. Remember to treat ama, so detoxify with triphala or other laxatives if needed. There's more info about acne covered in the skin lecture, by the way. All right, what about mood swings and insecurity? We mentioned already that the liver is taxed due to the rapid fluctuation of hormones. So we want to support the liver through this. We don't want to aggravate the liver. If the teenager is drinking coffee, that aggravates the liver, and the hormones are aggravating the liver, it's a cocktail for more emotions. Teens may become really self-conscious of their developing bodies and really of whether or not the other sex will find them attractive. So what do you want to do during this time? Make sure your teenagers get enough rest, even though you might want them to be, working hard. Instead of calling them lazy, just remember they need a little more sleep. Give them positive reinforcement if you can, right? You might need to discipline a bad behavior, but always affirm the whole person. Right? Like, fight the behavior, not the person. That's hard to do sometimes. Diet treatments. Avoid foods that have poor quality oils in them. Avoid eating really late at night. Alcohol. Fried foods. Instead, favor bitter taste if there's a lot of mood swings and insecurity. Again, depending on the doses of your kid. Liver supportive herbs might help. Guduchi is a great adaptogen and liver tonic, and some of these other herbs are a little more cleansing. Bhumi amalaki and aloe vera are cleansing herbs. Adaptogens can help deal with stress, like licorice and ashwagandha. All right, kids need way more sleep than adults. I mentioned that already. Here's some figures here. If we look up here, we see that teenagers need 8 to 10 hours, not the 7 to 8 of older adults or 7 to 9 of most adults. So kids do need more sleep. Make sure that you give it to them. I remember I used to keep my kids up a little bit later because I wanted to spend more time with them, and it's like you get home at the end of the workday, you're trying to prepare food, and by the time you're done with all of your chores and everything like that, it's time for the kids to go to bed, and then you never get to enjoy them. Well, that really stinks, right? So I used to keep my kids up late, but I noticed that was causing bad moods for them and poor performance at school. So I started putting them to bed earlier, and it was much better for them. So we just have to figure out other ways of spending quality of time with each other, and we do. So yeah, here's a little chart visually. Eating disorders can begin around the time of puberty because people are so, women generally, are so self-conscious of their appearance and kind of tie their value and self-worth to how they look. And that coupled with media promoting a really artificial, unhealthy weight. Which I always find very interesting. It's not what I consider, to be, this sort of one size all model of beauty, and that size being very small. It's certainly not the paradigm of beauty that I see, but for some reason the media promotes that, and a lot of young women buy that, buy that idea or belief or opinion and follow it. But as their bodily appearance and hormones are changing, they may become more self-conscious and think that they're undesirable or unattractive, and there's social pressure, so it may incite some eating disorder. Also, problems in their home life can spark these things too. So, I've seen families do this where they project their own issues with food on their child. Adults who are in midlife are gaining too much weight and they're fat and they don't, or obese, and they don't want their children to suffer that issue, and so they're hypersensitive about their kids gaining weight. Well, kids are not, in the same time of life. They're not in midlife. Their metabolism is good, so you don't need to stress as much. And certain kids have different constitutions, and Ayurveda says that actually Pitta Kapha, which tends to have an above average weight, is considered to be the most healthy, hardiest, and even in some ways the most attractive of the doshas. So I think Ayurveda has a really different, looks at weight with a really different lens than modern media. So if the parents are saying, I don't want ice cream, I don't want to get fat, the kids may think, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be eating ice cream either. Maybe I should be worried about getting fat. So the way you talk about your body and the way you talk about their body is going to have a huge influence on their self-image. And sometimes kids will hang on to one thing you said when you were in a bad mood or said the wrong thing one day, and you don't even think that, but they're still hanging on to it. So, find ways to reinforce your child's self-image, self-esteem, etc. If your child has an eating disorder, they need professional help early. Eating disorders are deadly. Anorexia has a really, it's a really high death rate, a really high fatality rate, something like 30%, 25%. I can't remember the exact amount, but this is nothing to fool around with, and professional help as early as possible has a huge impact on outcome. Always be talking about their body in a positive way. Don't overly get hung up on your own physical appearance. Celebrate the whole person. If you don't stress out about your appearance, then they probably won't either. Also consider how social media can be impacting their body image, and limit if necessary. So, of course, again, seek professional help and get a meal plan for a child who's struggling. There are lots of herbs that increase appetite and help build kapha, so you can check those out. What about another issue in this area? Teenagers can get pregnant, right? And they can also get sexually transmitted diseases. And that comes from having sex, including protected sex. People think that unprotected sex is the cause of all pregnancies. Actually, that's not the case. There's a huge failure rate with most forms of contraception, according to the CDC. Teens feel a lot of pressure to be sexually involved, and teenagers are a huge high risk group for sexually transmitted diseases and AIDS, etc. So what can help with this? Sex education, fertility awareness can help limit unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases. But of course, according to the Center for Disease Control, abstinence is the only 100% safe way to prevent pregnancy and STDs, and in many times your child's heart as well, from getting broken and feelings of intense betrayal. There's enough betrayal out there without sex complicating the matter. So the CDC notes that birth control pill is 99% effective at avoiding pregnancy if it's used exactly according to directions and the woman is in excellent physical health. Unfortunately, those perfect conditions rarely exist. So if a person has a bout of diarrhea, that could actually poop out the majority of the hormones and cause ovulation. If the person gets sick and misses forgets to take the pill, or just there's a number of, some of them even unknown ways in which, but if it's used exactly according to directions, it has a 99% success rate. The actual effective rate for birth control pill is only 91%. So with an average case, a woman who is sexually active and using the pill has an unintended pregnancy. 9% of women who are using the pill have an unintended pregnancy within the first year if they're sexually active. So that's a huge number. I mean, you have a 1 in 10 chance, basically, of getting pregnant within the first year with the pill. So, and look at these other contraceptive devices. A condom results in failure, an unintended pregnancy for 18% of women who are sexually active using a condom. This is from the Center for Disease Control, the CDC website. The pill, as we said before, only a 91% effective rate or a 9% failure rate yearly. So that is 9% each year. So anyway, vasectomies and female sterilization for getting the fallopian tubes tied or cut are those have a really low failure rate. IUDs have a low failure rate, and other implants may have a low failure rate, but patches, the pill, diaphragm, etc., as well as condoms, have a really big failure rate. So, yeah, interesting that it's 9% per year. So, 25% probability of getting pregnant within 3 years of use, 38% chance of getting pregnant within 5 years of use. I think it's something like 6 or 7 years it jumps over 50%. So if you have a teenage girl that starts using the pill at 15 and is sexually active at 15, within 7 years, basically by the time they graduate college, there's a 50% chance of pregnancy. Condom is an 18%. It says 22% here. It's 18% according to the CDC. So, just take that. Your teenage girls and guys should take that into account when they think about being sexually active and, how they're going to handle that situation. Make sure that you and the person you're having sex with has been tested for STDs prior to sex. This is for any age, really, and start getting regular pap smears and gynecological exams once you're sexually active, because HPV can cause infertility, basically. For different STDs like herpes, you're generally going to use pitta-pacifying, cooling, anti-inflammatory herbs. Rhubarb can be used in vaginal infections and STDs, according to Pohl as well. Great, so that covers the teenage years and preteen from 10 to 18 years old.